Hello and welcome to this latest episode of Circle Back. My name is Sam Davidson. I'm the CEO at the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. And today we're bringing this really exciting conversation with Eddie George. You might know him as a football player, but he's much more than that, especially with his life off of the field after football. We cover his entrepreneurial beginnings. We cover his journey to the NFL. And we also covered everything that he's been doing since his playing career ended, including one way that he gives back now as the head coach of Tennessee State University. This episode, as all Circle Back episodes, are brought to you by the Beth and Randy Chase Family. And be sure to learn more about Circle Back and tune in at ec.co/circleback. On with the show. Welcome back to Circle Back, production of the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. I'm here today with Eddie George, who's, as we're going to learn, is a multi-hyphenate, I think they call it, because we've got football player, we have entrepreneur, we have actor, we've got coach. We're going to get into all that. But Eddie, welcome. Thanks for making time.
Man, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
So listen, let's get into it. First question, because we're going to eventually get to your entrepreneurial career, your background, especially in business. But let's start off. Who was the first entrepreneur that you can remember meeting or knowing?
Before I knew what an entrepreneur was, I think I have to say my mother. My mother had an entrepreneurial spirit. She always had a 9 to 5, but she was always seeking other opportunities outside of her regular 9 to 5. She worked at Ford Company in Pennsylvania. She was a flight attendant as well as a model. She had aspirations of having her own boutique shop, which she developed, when I was about 12, 13 years old. I helped her put the shop together. It was like a thrift shop. She was a salesperson for various beauty products, KM. So she always had an entrepreneurial spirit and always talked about different revenue streams and having her own business. She did what she had to do from the 9 to 5, but she always had that entrepreneurial spirit to invest in real estate, to always invest into some other business venture that was going to produce revenue streams. So when I think back on it, that was, my mother was an entrepreneur that I didn't know what an entrepreneur was, but I always thought she was just working.
That's right. You just thought that's what mom did. But yeah, it turns out she was doing on her own entrepreneurial journey. So growing up, what was that like to have a mom who was involved in lots of ideas and ventures? How did that shape how you grew up and walk us through a little bit what that was like, where you grew up and what home was like.
I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, all over the city. Grew up between my grandmother's house and where she lived at in Glenside to Abington, and also in Philadelphia, whether it was Cheltenham, it was, West Oak Lane, Mount Airy, Southwest Philadelphia. So I just say, hey, people ask me where I'm from, I say I grew up in Philadelphia. And I wound up going to Abington my last couple of years in high school. Then I went to a military academy. But my mother always exposed myself, my sister to everything in terms of being cultured and well-rounded, from travel to the arts. She put me in my sister and I in different classes since I was a young boy, whether going to Philadelphia or every Saturday or going to drama classes. You know, it was I didn't like it at first because I was more into sports, but she was always trying to broaden our horizons and show us the world with the little that she had.
And that's something that, looking back now, I assume, or talk a little bit about the appreciation there, because clearly, as an entrepreneur, that part of your life has been multifaceted and has involved some of these things you're talking about. So from what you know of entrepreneurship now, what does looking back, those opportunities she afforded you, how did those end up contributing to that worldview? Because clearly your childhood was about way more than football. Your life now is about way more than football. Right. So talk to you about how those things sort of reconcile.
Well, my mother's influence, it's seeking more outside the game of football. My father, blessed me with that gift. But my mother really pushed my education. And I wasn't a great student growing up. But she influenced me in so many ways, like in terms of my major in college, was inspired by a fifth grade project that I did where it was based on architecture. And she always said, hey, you should be an architect. You know, you can draw, you have a great mind for building things. And I was always enamored with these little scaled models of cities and buildings. And, you know, even to this day, I look at a scaled version of New York City and just sit and stare at it, all the details about it, the streets, the landscape, the architecture. Was always enamored with that, and that inspired me to pursue a degree in architecture when I got to Ohio State. Well, there wasn't a great deal of time for me to do both, to be an architect and a football player, but something that afforded some flexibility in schedule. Some was landscape architecture, and I pursued that, and I was one of two athletes in the history of Ohio State to ever go through the School of Engineering and to get a degree from the School of Engineering through as far as landscape architecture. So that's kind of, she's always had that influence on me in that regard. So I wanted to marry the two and make sure I got my education, but make sure it was something that I loved, I was passionate about, and that I can build a career in.
And when did it seem in your childhood, in high school, when did it dawn on you, your family, that football was going to be the next step, competitive football?
It never really dawned on me until my postgraduate year coming out of high school. I went to a military school. For the most part of my sophomore, junior year, end of my sophomore year, my junior year, my senior year, I went to a military school because I wasn't doing well in school in Philadelphia. I had probably a 1.5 GPA, and I thought I was going to go to Penn State or someplace like that and play football. But she had to remove me from that environment and put me in a place where I was surrounded by kids who was excelling as student athletes, were really as people. Because when you go to a place like Fort Union Military Academy, it really they really focus on the character of the person, the discipline of that individual, your daily habits, what you constantly think. We had to sit at a desk in a room about this size, and 2 bunk beds, 2 desks. You had a sink and closet space, and that was it.
That's it.
And we had to sit at a desk with dividers up in between us. We couldn't talk. It was quiet time for 2 hours every day on Saturdays too, and study. And when you were done with your work, guess what? You had to pull a book down from your top shelf and read. You had to do something in regards to productive and constructive in terms of your education. So I went there for 2.5 years, and that's when I really embraced the idea of education and reading and getting lost in another world. And it was cool to not only get to have 1,000 yards rushing in the football season and being the man and getting all these letters from colleges and just being a great athlete, but to have the grades to marry with that and to be well-rounded and be a leader in the barracks. You know, the higher your rank, the more revered you were. You know, so that was the standard. Anything less below that, you were trying to fail. And that was like, you was a sucker for that. You know, you couldn't, if you're not getting great grades, if you're not a leader in the barracks, you're a sucker for that. So the environment that I was in really made a huge impact on and how it shaped my life.
And that's important because sometimes we say around here that surroundings can beat intentions, or surroundings can improve intentions. Because we get a lot of people here who've got $1 million ideas, of course. But in terms of execution, it takes discipline. It takes that focus. And we talk about that a lot. I know you talk about a lot of this, I'm sure, with your team and with athletics. It takes that commitment, that hard work. But that's true in entrepreneurship, whether you want to grow something big or just something that is going to stay a certain size, benefit your family, your legacy, et cetera. So again, those foundational steps that you're talking about were good for you in high school, but I assume continue even now to serve you in your career.
No question. It's all encompassing. The lessons that I've learned, the experiences that I've gone through, the pain, the wins, the lessons, or quote unquote the losses, have all prepared me for where I am today to be a coach.
Yeah,
I'm not just a coach of football. I'm a coach of life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a coach of handling adversities, perseverance, dealing with pain, not just the physical pain, but the emotional pain, the spiritual pain. It's truly remarkable how everything that I've done has prepared me for this. And, without jumping ahead, I know we want to talk about my coaching life, but that's what it is, and that's what I do, and it's just in a different form. I can talk about wealth management. Mm-hmm. I can talk about landscape architecture. I can talk about football. I can talk about acting. I can talk about, commentating. All of those things that I've done, and I've done at a very high level, and I went through the necessary steps to achieve those things. Nothing was given; everything was earned.
And was it when you get to Ohio State? You mentioned one of two football players to go through the engineering school. I'm sure, I'm sure, but were there times where it's like, I don't have to have this degree. I can take a much easier way out, right?
It wasn't football player. There was a basketball player.
Okay. Athlete,
and he actually has a business here in town. He's an architect, landscape architect as well. Carl Moody.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, Moody Nolan, who has different buildings around here. He's built several buildings, was my mentor at college.
Excellent.
And it was a time when I wasn't able to keep up academically at Ohio State with having to go to studio to practice, and from practice back to studio without seeing my apartment for 48 hours. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Because you're in there all night, you're pulling all-nighters. And I had to be effective in the studio, but then go to practice and play at a high level at Ohio State. Not
right.
This is at the elite athletes in the country you're competing against every day. So that was a lesson learned. And it got to a place where I said, listen, I'd rather take something easy just to stay eligible than to be teetered on eligibility. And, because these classes were difficult. And it's not like I can go find a tutor or somebody to pay off to go do to do this stuff. Who knows about, horticulture?
Right. One other guy.
Yeah. Or grading, or all of these difficult mathematic classes that I had to take to figure things out. So I had to do the work, and it wasn't easy. And I wanted to take the easy way out, but he says, no, this is a part of your plan, and you can be one of a couple of guys to ever come through the school with your legacy and achieve something greater than just taking the easy way out. So you need to see it through, stick it through it. And I'm here to help you, to help guide you, to help you through it, to talk you through it. But you're going to have to do things different. If you want to be different in life, you're going to have to do what the others aren't willing to do.
And that was enough, it seems like, because again, it where you're talking about the stadiums you got to play in, against the athletes you got to play with, the pursuit of fame had to have been very tempting, very intoxicating, versus the pursuit of, let's say, achievement, of being in a rare company. And again, you're in rare company on the football field, but here's a chance he saw something in you. And again, your mom seeing something in you, say, look, I'm pulling you out of this environment. We're going to military school. For him to say, look, I see something in you. Don't sort of sell yourself short. Talk about the importance. Obviously, you are a coach now. You get the chance to mentor, to advise. We're big on mentorship here. The role of mentors, people who have one, who are one, swear by it, that there's no better resource and tool. So talk to us a little bit about mentorship, looking back, some of those key ones that you had prior to your pro career.
Oh, man. Mentorship for me was key. Like I said, Carl Moody was one for me from a student perspective and also a professional perspective. some of my teammates, like Raymond Harris, who was my roommate. He was older than me. He was a couple of years ahead of me when I first got to Ohio State. Butler by Note. We were all running in the running back room. Chico Nelson, who's no longer living, God rest his soul. He was the captain of our team. He's safety from Florida. They all took me under their wings, and they kind of showed me how to work, how to do things. They were kind of my mentors in college. Mentors from afar, was Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson. I'm not talking about necessarily that in my field of play, and of course Walter Payton and those guys, Rich Jerry Wright, but I could see the competitiveness of those guys up close and personal. How Magic prepared and how he impacted his teammates as a leader. The same way the maturation of Michael Jordan to go from, being a scorer to being a consummate teammate to winning championships. Looking at guys like Phil Jackson, just reading their books through the years of understanding what leadership is and was. Bruce Lee,
yeah,
another one. To be like water. I mean, all those things. You can have mentors like we're talking that's personal, and you can have mentors from afar that you can study and learn from reading their stories, their history. And I spend endless hours just reading on that stuff, even now, as a head coach. So that's very important for kids to know that you can find someone that you want to be like in your field of play or as an entrepreneur and study it and really understand what it took for them to get to that place and study their losses.
Yeah. Not
the successes. Look at the losses. Look at the times of adversity when they didn't have any money, when they were living out of a shoebox, or they had success and lost it all. How did they get through it? Not the necessarily the wins in terms of how many deals that they accomplished and they made billions of dollars, but when they were down to the last dime, what got them through it? Was it their faith? Was it a person? Was it all of it above? That's the stuff that to me is where the gold is.
And how did that transition into the NFL? So now at an even higher level, even I don't say bigger stadiums, but still big stadiums, big TV audience. What did that feel like? How did both the discipline you had cultivated, the mentors you had assembled, how did that allow you as you enter the NFL and succeed at that level?
Going into the league, just primarily focused on football at that time.
And did you think that's where, while you were at Ohio State, you were like, all right, I mean, obviously junior, senior year for sure, this is what's ahead of me.
Yeah. So nothing was guaranteed. Again, I played as a freshman, got through my sophomore year, had a couple fumbles that really set me back, had to fight through that. Then my junior year, at best, I was considered to be second team All Big Ten. Going into my senior year, was on anybody's Heisman list. But deep within my spirit, I knew what I wanted to accomplish. So I gained momentum as time went on.
Yeah.
So yes, by my senior year, that was the goal. And I stumbled upon that goal, at the end of it because of the success that I had. Yeah. And then it was go time, like, okay, I'm going to go be a legend in the NFL. The next thing is to try to have a Hall of Fame career and work my ass off to get there. So at that particular time, again, the same mentors, Raymond was playing for the Chicago Bears at that time. I had a couple other buddies that played in the league, and they kind of showed me and told me the things to look out for, what to do. Jerome Bettis is a huge, huge, huge part of my football life, especially in the NFL, because he was one of the guys that I had a chance to talk to prior to coming in with my agent, Lamont Smith. We had the same agent. And that's how I picked Lamont, honestly, because he was with him. He exudes class. He is a thinker. He is patient. He thinks 4 or 5 moves ahead. And oh man, JB, man, gosh, means the world to me. It almost brings me to tears because he's like a brother to me.
Yeah.
And how he handles his business. Till this day, I still talk to Jerome. We've done business ventures together.
Mm-hmm.
We've taken L's together. We've done golf trips together. Even taking the job at Tennessee State was one of the guys that once I got to the place where I knew I was going to take it, I said, okay, walk me through this.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of things up until this point. My career has taken me so many different avenues. I love my wealth management business, this, that. How can I frame this? How can I still grow my business while also this part of my life is calling me? Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And he's always been there. Funny story about JB. And I take the job at Tennessee State, and I get a call from Notre Dame, and they want to play us. And I'm like, man, JB, you know what? I got a chance to beat y'all twice, so I'll stay there down Tennessee State. And he says, well, I know. I said, well, how do you know? So I brokered the deal.
Yeah.
I was
There
like, yeah, you okay? I said, yeah. So he's behind the scenes without saying a word, doing things. So he's been a tremendous resource for me.
And do you think back as you started your career and had the success you did, because I can't even imagine how many distractions, we'll call it, that come at NFL players, NFL stars.
Yes.
And so, of course, it's good that you had those folks in your corner to probably prevent some L's, not that you didn't have any, but again, to surrounding speed intention. So to have yourself surrounded in that environment led to the success that you had.
When you go into the league, you talk about distractions, that's 99% of it. Everybody's talented. If you get blessed enough to get drafted and you're on somebody's roster, that is the 1% of the 1%. Now, what separates that 1% from the other 1% is eliminating the distractions off the football field. That's friends, family, money, girls, or women, or whatever else that is, that lifestyle, the fame. You can either be about the fame, the sizzle, or you can be about the meat, which is the work, and there's time for that. There's the off season for that. But 95% of it is investing into your body, your mind, and your team that's going to help you be successful. Your chef, masseuse, chiropractor, your other trainers, your strength and conditioning coach, the athletic staff, the training staff at the facility. I mean, all of that, you're making a huge investment into that because that's where it comes down to. Now, I've seen guys come in that have run 4.3 and a 40 and do all these great things as an athlete, but they're not mentally tough enough to sustain an NFL season because they're wrapped into, gambling on Wednesday nights with the fellas and spending money here and burning the candle on all ends. And there's times that you'll enjoy that stuff, but once it becomes your lifestyle, it's not sustainable. Something's going to give.
And how much of that, as you started to come into the league, have success, and grow your income, obviously you eventually get into wealth management as an entrepreneurial venture, how much did you, and if that was your agent, but start to realize, okay, I need to be smart with this?
Oh, man. From day one, a friend of mine told me, Rod Lewis, a tight end from what the Houston Oilers said, once you know the value of a dollar, you never go broke. Every penny counts.
Yeah.
Now that you've gotten millions, you just don't throw the change that you get from McDonald's back then for the cards and all that and throw it in the back seat. You value that penny. You value that nickel because there'll come a day and time where you're going to need that nickel and you appreciate it. So knowing that, understanding one, taxes are a huge part of setting the tone. I have this saying, and I've learned this from, Sam Rhines, my cousin actually, who does the basketball teams. Good Lord, the leagues up in Philadelphia. I can't think, it escapes me right now. But he says, if you live by the gross, you'll die by the net. If you live by the gross, you'll die by the net. And that's always stood with me. So understand that Uncle Sam gets paid first and your age and all that. And then at that bottom number, that's what you set your budget to. That's when life begins.
Yeah, and we've got entrepreneurs who may raise money. It's a similar situation of, oh, look, my company bank account at least has all of these investment dollars. Well, you don't get to take that home. You've got to go put that to work with the promises that you made or the pitch that you sold. And so you get you're playing, you're having success, having more fame. When did you start to sort of realize, think about, dawn on you? Obviously, you knew going on this wasn't going to be something you do for 50 years. But in terms of, okay, I need to start thinking about what's next.
That's a great question because you calculate the years and you kind of look at, the life of a running back. And if you're blessed enough, you can get 5 to 7 in.
Yeah.
And if you're really blessed, you can play 10 to 13 years. And when you're coming into the league, you think that's an eternity. Well, it's not. It is the blink of an eye. I mean,
35, maybe.
35, if you're lucky. I retired at 31. Marcus Allen retired at 37. Wow. And that's an anomaly at that position. So we begin to think about in year 4 or 5, like, whoa, hold up, time out, slow down. Like, I'm just now hitting my prime. Like, so what's next? So right around year 5, 6 is kind of when you're like, okay, what's the next couple of years look like for me? You feel good, you're playing great, you're at the height of your career, but in the NFL stands for not for long, 1. 2, as an NFL running back, they start to look at your numbers. They look at, okay, the number of carries you had, your age, and how much you're making. And the older that you get in the NFL, the more expensive you are. So even like I think the veteran minimum now is like $1.2 million or something like that. Well, if a guy is a running back and he's only going to depreciate over time after the age of 30, his best days are behind him, why am I going to keep paying him $1 million when I can get a younger guy who might not be as good or has more of a step than he does, who has more upside, but he's cheaper?
Yeah. It's a business.
That's the business.
Yep.
Look at Derrick Henry. Still productive, very productive. Led the league in rush, or second or third in the league last year in rushing. But his value and his time here with Tennessee is up because of that very thing. And he's probably got, a window of 3 more years, 4 more years of productivity. But that's the nature of the beast. So, to answer the question, it was right around year 4, 5, 6. I began to think about what was next, and that's why I went back to Ohio State to get my degree in landscape architecture, so I can start my own business.
And what were some of the options that you were considering or thinking about? So, going back to school, starting a landscape architecture business, was anything else on the table?
No. At that time, I was getting presented with different opportunities to invest in projects.
Yeah.
Real estate projects, and they would come with plans and renderings. I'm like, man, I know this stuff I studied in school.
Yeah.
I said, not only can I just be the developer on the top end, I can also have input into the design of it and get paid that way.
Yeah.
So I said, development fee, with the being one of the money guys on the top, and also provide a service to other developers and other companies that I can continue to build that revenue stream. So I started the Edge Group. Ironically, they're still in existence today.
Yeah.
Going on, 20 years now.
Fantastic.
In 3 different markets.
And what was that process like of okay, I'm going to start a company, from paperwork to funding to growth to all of that?
It was daunting. It was uncomfortable. It was a world that I knew nothing about in terms of spreadsheets, capital, how to build it, all that. So I had some people around me to help me get the thing started. I had a business manager at the time who was well connected. I kind of shared the idea. I said, hey, man, it was 2001, actually. I was coming off my toe surgery. And instead of just, gallivanting around the universe, going on various cities and doing all this other stuff. I said, let me go back and get my degree and do my rehab in Ohio. So I went back, got my degree, and I said, well, listen, I'm interested in possibly starting a landscape architecture firm. He says, man, that'd be a great idea. And I said, well, I don't know how to start. They said, well, why don't you reach out to some of your professors? So I reached out to Jim Hiss, who was one of my professors at Ohio State. Really good man, good friend, still good friend to this day. And I said, man, I have this idea of starting my own landscape architecture firm. I'm getting all these opportunities to be an investor in these real estate projects. But I also can add this other element to it where I can get paid as our landscape architect and also build this brand, this business. What do you think? He says, oh my God, let me think about it. Long story short, I was like in July 2001, I'm in Columbus with Jim Hiss, Ted Hardesty, and Dick McBride. And we're sitting here. They were from another firm. And I'm sharing this idea with them. They're looking at me like, oh, God, this is Eddie George, Heisman Trophy winner, talking about landscape architecture. Well, long story short, we loved the idea. We started the Edge Group with 4 guys, and we built it out to 3 different firms. And I'm no longer a part of it. I sold out of the business, but it's another story. But it's been very successful. And the things I learned there was, one, you have like 5 or 6 different partners with 5 or 6 different visions.
Yeah.
That's the challenge of that. And I had visions of grandeur. I wanted to be a worldwide business. Like I said, look, I think big, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, I'm trying to be a $1 billion company, compete with the big boys. And well, some guys wanted to stay middle market, and that's fine. But long story short, the experience wasn't there for me, and certainly just trying to find my role in it all.
Yeah.
I wasn't designing. I wasn't planning. I was more or less the rainmaker, going out creating opportunities with different businesses and different people to bring in the work, and that was my strength. And I didn't feel comfortable in that. I wanted to learn more about the business, the bottom line, look at the numbers. How can I grow the business? And that's what inspired me to go get my master's in business at Kellogg School of Management in Northwestern.
And so was there something about that, the process of creating the Edge Group coupled with the MBA? I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs will do it more than once, which you have. And so inspired you to go back to get your MBA, and then where did the next venture happen?
Yeah, so I was losing. I would say I lost the passion to, I guess, build that business in terms of landscape architecture. It was I chalked it up as I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a landscape architect. I'm an entrepreneur. That's just one of the businesses. That's something that I got my degree in. I learned the valuable lessons in it, made some money, but what is my real passion in all of this? How can I really help people, in a major way based off of my experience? And also you use my network more effectively, So I just sat back and I looked at it, and, there were some classes that I took at Kellogg that really spoke to me from a business model standpoint. What can I do that I can get recurring revenue?
Okay.
Private equity spoke to me, venture capital. And I was like, I can go to a firm, I can do those things. But then I was approached with a couple firms here in town about joining their wealth management group, and they wanted me to head up their sports division. Well, that's fine. But the bigger picture is, getting a percentage of the AUM.
That's right.
That's the benefits of knowing where the bones are buried, right? Not just giving me, a salary, but what's the bigger picture? I'd rather get a percentage of the bigger pie that we're building, the 15 and 2 and 20 that you get on, in private equity. Now it's more like 1.5, 15 or something like that, but it's going down some since those times. But that's what I was interested in. So I talked to my personal wealth manager, Greg Eastman, who's based out of Scottsdale, and I told him about the opportunity, what I was thinking. I'm like, hey man, I'm trying to shift gears to another business, and based off of the things I know, my own personal life of how I was almost swindled out of my $3 million signing bonus. I want to be able to educate the next wave of athletes about personal finance, begin this journey with the end in mind. That was the whole premise behind it. And from a financial standpoint. And he said he loved it. And he says, well, what are you thinking about? I'm like, well, I'm thinking about starting this business with you. He says, oh, I thought so. I'm like, you're telling me you want to go to some other firm? I'm like, nah, man, let's do this. So I got my Series 766, got my licensing, been in the business now for almost a decade. Wow. Work with high net worth individuals and foundations. And it's been a wonderful business to be a part of, because now, within that world, I can golf on the golf course while working. Yeah. Building relationships, trying to acquire assets, showing the benefits, showing the win-win. And that business is all about trust and transparency, and having the proper backing, in my mind, of who's backing you. If you're independent, what does that look like? Is it FINRA, SEC regulated? I'm with the Ameriprise, and the beautiful thing about them, their back offices, their compliance is tight. Their money is insured. So it's third party. Like I can't touch your assets without your knowledge or without your signature. Mm-hmm. That's important for me. It's not, me giving you my headliner, Edward George Wealth Management, and I just give you some statements, and no, it's legitimate, So that's what was very important for me. So, that's how I got into what I'm doing now.
And money's a little bit different nowadays in professional sports than it was.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah, it
is.
So,
well, except for the running back position.
So you're still working out if you're managing some of those folks' contracts and where they're headed. So,
and that's the beauty of it, is that I could speak to it from experience. I signed a 7-year, $42 million contract. And I lived that life, and there were some mistakes that I made that I could speak to young men about. Mm-hmm. The importance of getting insurance, an annuity. Having an account that's working for you, that is professionally managed, and going over, your statements on a monthly basis or quarterly basis. Mm-hmm. So you're sitting on top of the food chain with the knowledge and knowing what the questions to ask and what to look for. How's your money working for you? And, what's next? If you have children, do you want to, get a plan for them that's going to be directly for their educational purposes, where it comes out tax-free. And by the way, if you continue to still have money in it, you can pass that on to a relative or to a brother and so forth. Just maintaining your wealth and gaining. So those are the things, those tools and the knowledge and the products that you can use to attain wealth in that regard.
And what are you seeing with those clients, or even with athletes today? Is there a high tendency or desire to become entrepreneurs after their playing career?
I think nowadays I'm seeing a lot of young men now have that entrepreneurial spirit. They're thinking with the end in mind. They're not just coming and saying, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna make all my money as a football player and that's it." And I'm meeting a lot of young men coming into the NFL with the mindset of, "Okay, I know this is going to end one day. What does my end look like? Am I involved in a nonprofit? Am I passionate about building homes for the underprivileged, or affordable housing, attaching your passion with your purpose and making that make money for you." They're thinking earlier about that. Whereas before it was, where's the next party? What's the next piece of jewelry I can buy? Things that are going to depreciate or probably not even real.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, who knows what the hell a real diamond looks like?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You can look at it through the glass and like, oh, okay, he's telling you one thing. Yeah, look at this, that, whatever. It's real. It's probably not real. You're buying it for $500,000.
Yeah.
Not knowing it. You know what I'm saying? And that's fun, but those are lessons that you learn. man, I wish, the things I know now, I wish I wouldn't invested a lot of things, but that's it though. Yeah.
And how does where does acting come in? I mean, I think being an actor is essentially an entrepreneurial endeavor because it's you. You're selling you to the casting director, to whoever it is. So obviously you talked about how you got to do that in your childhood, but that gets kind of a full circle moment after your playing career too.
Well, I was approached with different opportunities to be on camera doing various things. And again, telling stories was a part of being an entrepreneur. And telling stories on front of the camera as a commentator. And I wanted to be a better commentator. And if I was going to be an actor, I wanted to learn the art of acting. Mm-hmm. So I went into theater. And I went religiously for 4.5 to 5 years with this little Italian lady named Anna Maria, who was telling me the art of acting. She was my teacher, and we would meet and we would talk about Shakespeare and all of the arts, Uta Hagen, just really delve deep into the art of acting. And I jumped on the theater stage, and that led to some success with here in town. Did Shakespeare, Nashville Shakes, where I did Othello, Julius Caesar, and then stuff with Nashville Rep from Top Dog, Underdog to A Raisin in the Sun to a few other acting opportunities. Then got me an opportunity to be in the musical Chicago in New York City.
Yeah,
so everything that I've done was a rhyme and a reason to it. And to be honest with you, the arts was my saving grace in terms of being healed for the process of leaving the game of football. There is a period of grief that you go through. And for me, it was expressed constructively through the lens of another actor, taking that same energy of fear, of doubt, uncertainty, of pain, of loss, of my NFL life, and speak that through the truth of a different character, while exploring other ways of expression through writing, through journaling. I mean, all of that helped me find my next purpose and passion.
Which is
coaching now.
That's what you're doing now. Perfect segue. So tell us about how that materialized. Were you looking for it? Did somebody call you? What that's been like a few seasons now here at Tennessee State?
Well, in 2020, when the world shut down, I was still doing my wealth management business, but clearly everything else shut down, from Hollywood to the theater. Nobody was doing anything. Everybody was living in their apartments and having wine parties and on Instagram with D-Nice and watching that stuff. And, it was a great opportunity to really recalibrate and appreciate the things you did have, and that was your family, if you were blessed enough to have a family. So at that time, I was just really focused on my son because he wasn't going to school. He was, I would train him. I would work on my 9-iron and my golf game and continue to work on my wealth management business. And one relationship that I had was with the president of Tennessee State, Glenda Glover, working with the AKA Foundation. And we're about a good 6 months into the business relationship, 7 months, and the market is still rolling. Like, okay, we're during the pandemic. So I get a call from her or a text message saying, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something." So I'm like, "Oh, let me just make sure everything's good from the business side." And I'm looking like, okay, we're making money, so maybe she wants to add to this. So I'm like, let's go, right? She calls, she's talking, and immediately she says, "Mr. George, I really want you to know that you're doing an awesome job for us from the wealth management side, but that's not what I want to talk to you about." I'm like, okay. And then she says, "I want you to have an open mind about what I'm about to ask you." I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe she wants me to help with fundraising or something like along those lines. She says, "Well, I want you to think about being the next head coach for Tennessee State." And this is right off the heels of what Deion did at Jackson State early in this. And I thought that was amazing. I'm like, man, text Prime on Twitter. I said, man, that is awesome what you're doing for the kids, man. You know, you're going to make a huge impact on their lives. You're a game changer, blah, blah, blah. I said, man, that's awesome. And she asked me to do it. I'm like, hold up, time. I'm appalled right now. 'Cause I'm thinking, okay, I'm doing a great job on the wealth management side, but you're going to ask me to be a head coach. Like, I know nothing about coaching, never coached a day in my life, didn't care about it, didn't want to. And just said, okay, you know, I'll just say, yeah, I'm honored, and, you know, let me pray on it, let me sleep on it. And I didn't think anything else about it. But it kept coming up, and I was like, man, you know, if I started a program, how would I start it? And I thought about the wealth management side in terms of I would definitely prepare them to begin the end with the end in mind. And I would think about, you know, the physical, the mental, the emotional, you know, and the spiritual pillars that I would come to this program with. And really it's going to be a self-development program through the spiritual aspects. And I'm thinking, oh, shit, Eddie, don't do this. Don't get excited about this. Yeah. Then I'm thinking about the training, how I would train them. Things I would say, all of these things. I'm thinking about building this program and who I would hire and how we did it. And it was just like all this. It just took on a life of its own. And over a 6-month period, or excuse me, a 3-month period, I did my due diligence, talked with my wife, talked to various mentors, coaches in the business, and asked them, is this realistic for me to jump into this position without going through the rungs of the business of starting off as a GA and then work on my way as an assistant to a position coach to a coordinator to head coach. That's how that goes. And you you grind through that shit. That's a grind that I really didn't want to have a part of. But the jump from that to being a head coach, you know, from Broadway to now a headset, you know, that's quite a shift. And can I do it? Can I be successful? So after talking to a few guys, I said, man, absolutely, because you're the CEO of your, think of it that way. You're the CEO of the business. You can delegate a lot of your stuff over to your coordinators and assistant coaches. You just set the vision. I said, okay. But ultimately, it came down to me in my quiet times with God. And I said, listen, you know, God, if this is for me, give me a clear sign this is for me to do, because I have no interest in just doing this for vanity purposes or to gain something from it. It's really about serving these young men. And if I were to leave this earth or be on my deathbed, would I regret not doing this? Because these opportunities don't come around too often for anybody, let alone a person of color, you know, to have jump from one profession to being a head coach. That doesn't happen at all, you know. Yeah. So I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to do God's work. I'm going to go impact these lives. I'm going to walk by faith and not by sight. And I'm going to do this thing. And now I'm 4 years into it, and I wake up every day loving it even more.
And when we had the honor to induct you into our Hall of Fame back in October, you talked about a lot of what you tell your men about having guts. Yes. And so as we close out here, remind this audience again what that means.
Well, guts to me, it's very personal. Because, you know, in order to achieve a God-sized dream, you have to have guts. It's if you're not laughing at your dream, it's not big enough. You know what I'm saying? It's not big enough. It's small, and there's nothing wrong with small dreams. I mean, you can achieve those things, and that's the problem. You just might achieve them. But it's got to be something so big and so outrageous that it makes you uncomfortable, because that's where the beauty is. That's where the gold is. That's where the growth is. It's not about the destination. It's who you become along the destination. So GUTS is an acronym that I came up with. The G stands for gumption, which stands for guts, which stands for courage. It starts with the courage to step out there and to dream of something big and be willing to go through everything that is required to see it through. The pain, the storms, the challenges, the no's, the discouragement, the rejection, the physical pain, the mental pain, the understanding of what's going to take to get to the point A to point B, of, okay, the people I need that I need to be involved with, the plan, the proper plan, the adjustment of the plan to navigate the rough waters, what's going to take for me to get to the understanding of that, the wisdom, the knowledge, to acquire the knowledge of whatever profession that or whatever dream you're going to go to. Like for acting, it was me studying to be an actor. It was me going to business school. It was me getting going back to Ohio State to get my degree in landscape architecture, understanding the knowledge, the wisdom. T is tenacity. You're going to have a tenacious spirit to overcome and meet those challenges that come. And S is for sacrifice. You want to sacrifice something. Your free time with friends. You want to sacrifice friendships, relationships. You're going to have to walk a completely different path. If your dream is so big and ridiculous, it's going to require that. You may be sleepless nights. It may be nights where you have to sacrifice going out with your boys so you can get rest or to work on your craft. So that's what guts means. And it's something that I had a wristband on it. I'm not wearing it today, but it's something that we say every day. We end with guts. You got to have guts to be great. And if you have the guts to say, hey, I want to go play in the professional league, okay, let's see that. You can't have, you have league dreams with a backyard work ethic. Mm-hmm. So we're going to test that work ethic. I'm going to find out if you're really willing to go there and if you have the guts to see it through to get there. And if you don't make it, you're going to come damn close to it.
That's right. Better than you thought at the beginning.
Right.
Man, thank you for making time today, Eddie.
I've enjoyed this.
Yeah.
I really have.
Well, that's great. Well, again, thank you for all you've done for the Nashville community, for Tennessee State, and for being a great example to a lot of folks out there about what entrepreneurship can look like and the heights and the places it can take you to. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode of Circle Back. As a reminder, each Circle Back episode is brought to you through the generosity of the Beth and Randy Chase family. And be sure to subscribe and learn more about these podcasts at ec.co/circleback.